So let me talk to you a little bit about ITQs in Chile. The individual transferable quotas have been used in Chile to manage their main fisheries since 2001. And we have the great hope that this management system could help us to achieve several management objectives. Economic objectives of recovering the rents of the fishery, but also to help recover fish stocks who were mostly depleted by that time, and also to meet social goals, to recover employment, to avoid social conflicts, because there are a lot of fight for the few fish we had. So we really put a lot of hope on this management system, and I really believe that this system have not helped, that is not able to reach all of these goals. I think ITQs have worked very well from the economic point of view, but a lot of things have happened there that ITQs have not been able to reach ecological and social goals. So I'm going to try to explain you why I think that's important. Sustainability is actually one of the main issues in Chile, because our economy is based on the exploitation of natural resources, not only fish but also mining and forestry. Okay, so we need to understand as a country, as it's the same probably in many Latin American countries, we need to understand how we can make a better use of the environment. How can we reach sustainable development, and not only short-run development, okay? And I think ITQs have helped in Chile to create short-run profits, but they are not helping to build a sustainable fisheries. So why do we need ITQs? Why do we need individual transferable quotas? The first thing we learn in the environmental economics class, probably in Chris Costello's class, is about the tragedy of the commons, right? When we have free access to the resources, what happens is that people find this to be a good business and go there and without thinking on the biological impacts of their activities. So we end up with too many boats and with too few fish. So we have over exploitation, we have over investment, we have an activity that is not sustainable, and then we need to start limiting the activity. We begin by putting some kind of biological constraint, right? To have closed seasons, we have minimum size, etc. But at the end, we need to limit catches. If we don't limit catches, basically what happens is that the harvest will be out of control of the regulatory system. We try to control effort, which is what we would like to do, but what happens is that the economic firms or agents that are making decisions, they adjust. They adjust to the regulatory process that are in hand. So if you don't allow more fishermen to enter, what happens is that they just buy bigger boats. Okay, so they still increase effort, and the only way we can really try to control what's happening is limit catches. So the first answer to that was to establish global quotas. Okay, so you say you cannot fish more than 1,000 tons of fish, but what then happened is that a race for the fish is created. So they all go try to get the biggest share of that quota, and with dissipation of economic rent. So there is no economic rent. Basically, when you have this race for the fish, you have overinvestment again. So the main economic problem of the tragedy of the commons is not solved. So what is the solution to this problem? Is basically distributing quotas shares among fishermen. And when you give them to every fisherman an individual share of the quota, what happens is they can plan over the year how to use that quota in the best possible way. And that's what ITQ's main purpose is. Okay? And then if you let fishermen to trade that quota, you have an individual transferable quota system, which gives basically additional efficiency gains. So now if we have two fishermen, one with higher cost of fishing, that fisherman can get less profit from fishing, so he could be able to sell his quota to another fisherman who can make more profit, and both of them can benefit from that transaction. And that's the basic idea of why individual quotas need to be transferable. Okay? So ITQs were an efficient response to the economic problems created by this fisheries regulation, by the global quotas, but I think they not necessarily can ensure sustainable fisheries. So they can solve the economic problem, but they cannot solve sustainability, all sustainability issues. And why? Well, to understand that, we need to understand what we believe is to have a sustainable fishery. What sustainability means in fisheries. Let me talk to you a little bit about what happens in Chilean fisheries management. This is an translation, my translation of what the main government agency involved in fisheries says their goal is. So this is a translation of Suspesca for the guys who knows, who has been in Chile. It's their Undersecretary of Fishing. This is the maximum authority. And basically what they say they should do is to promote sustainable development of fishing and aquaculture activities by defining policies and applying regulation to increase social and economic benefits, okay, in the fisheries sector for the well-being of current and future generations in Chile. They don't talk about conservation here, if you see. They just talk about sustainable development. They talk about social and economic benefits for current and future people, okay? So we need to understand that that's what we have to try to complain to have sustainable fisheries. So there is sustainable development, which means we can use the fisheries resources over time, okay? There is economic rent, which is usually what this kind of instrument, ITQs, try to reach. But there are also social benefits. And that's the hard part, I think, of sustainability. What do we mean by social benefits in fisheries? So we can care, for example, about artisanal fishermen, low-scale fishermen who is just, you know, they only fish mainly for food and for maintaining their families, not formal firms that sell the fish, but to sustain their lives. We can talk about labor, so fisheries as a source of labor for the society, as a source of good wages activities, okay, an activity that create employment with wage. We can talk about rent distribution in the fisheries, so how the rents that are created by the fisheries sector can be distributed between people. We can talk about research and development for new products, for entrepreneurship, etc. Well, the thing is, when they talk about social benefit, they talk about all of these objectives, okay? So sustainable fisheries not only requires to have a sustainable stock of fish from the biological point of view, it also requires to have economic rents and to have a lot of social benefits from the fishery activity. And not only for people living here today or using the fishery today, but also for future generations. And the problem, I think, is that we don't have enough instrument for the regulatory management to achieve all of these objectives. So I think ITQs can help here, okay? But it's really, really hard. And that has been our experience in Chile, that ITQs are going to help with sustainability and with all these social benefits. So what do we understand by sustainable development? We want to use use of natural resource in the short and in the long run. So what we usually think about conservation to avoid fisheries collapse. But we also want economic efficiency, and both from a static and a dynamic perspective. We want to give the best possible use to the fish today, but we also want to give the best possible use of the fish over generations. So that means we want to protect stock for using it in the future. And we also want social equity. We also want fairness about the use of the fish and the distribution of the rent. And again, not only today, among the people today, but also comparing today's generations with future generations. And that, of course, creates a huge problem because future generations cannot tell us what they want. So we just need to think how can we think about sustainability? how can we think about different goals of fisheries management if that people cannot tell us what exactly they want? So we need to require to meet biological, economic, and social goals with a special emphasis on social fairness. And in summary, what the Brundtland Commission says, development that meets needs of present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And one of the main problems of that is that when we think about stakeholders in fisheries, is that they have many different goals on mind. When we talk about marine scientists, they are mainly focused on protecting stocks. Okay, so we realize that we need to take into account, profits, but the main thing here is protect the stocks. If we talk to social scientists, we usually want to think about this from a social perspective. So how can we increase people's welfare? Okay, yes, it's true we want to protect the stocks, but our main issue is to increase welfare. Firms just want to make profits. That's what we think, and that's what they have shown over time. And well, they need to care a little bit about the environment. Otherwise, people is going to start regulating them, and they're going to have problems there. Workers want more stable jobs. They want more salaries. Artisanal fishermen want more fish. There are more and more people entering the artisanal fishermen sector. Local communities, they think they want to protect traditions, and they want to keep fishing as an open access source. It is what has been over time, over years and years. They want their kids to be fishermen because it's just a tradition. And they say, why people is telling us we cannot be fishermen? Okay, that's what we have always done. And fishery collapse is not our fault. It's fault of the big companies, big firms that are overexploiting this. And processing firms just want to have access. So you can see it's really hard to think about sustainable development from a perspective of every one of these stakeholders. And this is a major concern. Why? Because when we create regulations, what's going to happen, and here's the importance of the political process, is that these guys, the more powerful of these guys, are gonna implement finally what they think the goal of the fishery should be. And usually the most important, the one that have the more political power here are usually firms and workers. So what have been happening in Chile is that the fisheries regulation has been answered mainly to the groups that really create a lot of pressure over regulatory agencies, and that's mainly the firms, as I'm going to tell you later. So the thing here is, can ITQs meet all these goals? And my short answer is, I think no, they can't. So a major challenge for us is to meet all the goals of all these stakeholders in the short and long run. And I think in Chile we have put too much hope in this management system as it could solve all these sustainability problems. And I think that they can't. We need more. We need more instruments. We need better ways of management. We need better institutions, as I'm going to tell you later. So ITQs are an economic instrument. They increase firms' profitability in fisheries, but they cannot ensure all management goals for sustainability. That's what I think. So let me talk to you a little bit now about the experience of ITQs in Chile in the last 10 years. So the industry, the big industry in Chilean fisheries, they have been trying to use ITQs for years. So they tried to use the system in the 80s when we have this political system with Pinochet. So they were very liberal about market instruments, so they wanted to use ITQs. And the Congress, well, in that part, they didn't accept it. So in 91, the industry started using ITQs in very few fisheries, just for very small fisheries. That's all they could do. And then in 2001, they started using ITQs in all the main important fisheries in Chile. So in 2000, what happened is that there was a huge collapse, a huge reduction of the main fisheries, mainly jack mackerel. So they tried to close the fishery, and they tried to introduce individual quotas for 1 year. And they convinced people, they convinced other fishermen that ITQs were a good idea because they could plan over the year, they could have better benefits with lower harvest, lower catches. So then in 2002, this temporary law that was passed in 2001 was extended for 10 years. Okay? So we have been using those ITQs for the last 10 years, and what's happening now is that this law is about to end. So there is a huge discussion in Chile about if this system really helped us to manage very well the fisheries, and what do we need to change to the ITQ system, to the ITQ management system to increase, sustainability in fisheries. So what does the theory says about ITQs? What are the effects that we should expect about ITQs? So the first main effect is to increase the efficiency of fishing operation to avoid the race for the fish. Okay? So how this works, basically you can reduce fishing costs because firms don't need to rush for the fish. They can just wait and plan over the year for the most productive season. Okay? They can increase fish quality, so they can use fish for the most valued possible use. And it is expected that employment in the fishing operation could be reduced, okay, but could be more stable over year depending on the variability of the fish stocks. But we expect that there is more stability in the fishing industry in general. Another expected effect from ITQs is that the value of the processing products could be increased. Okay? Why? Because firms can plan better over the year, okay, and they can decide where to use the fish. It's not like when you have the race for the fish. What happens is that the firms need to process the fish as quick as they can. So what they usually do is just do fish meal. Okay, a lot of fish is processed very quickly. And higher value products might generate more employment, and that's what happened in Chile. And this also could increase average salaries, okay, because they are producing their productivity, the value of their productivity is increased. And what happened from a conservation point of view? Well, the effects are not clear. So some people think that that ITQs, and that's what the industry was telling, ITQs will solve conservation problems. Why? Because firms now have more incentives to care about future stocks. Okay? Because if they deplete the fish to the future, their quotas, their assets with the quotas are going to have less value in the future. So they are affecting themselves. So in some sense, they have more incentives to care about future stock. But what happened in reality is that those incentives are not enough. Okay? Why? Because there is also more incentive for illegal fishing if you don't have a good enforcement process. You know now what is the value of one quota. If you get a fish, if you fish, and then you know that you are going to be using this right to land that fish. And you want to use that right to land for the best possible value. So if you can get a fish that is black and you wanted one white to sell it for a higher value, then you're going to just discard that black fish. You don't want to use your right. And also you know what is the value of the illegal fishing. You exactly know what it is. And so therefore there is more incentive for what is called discarding and high grading in this fishery. And there is also higher pressure to increase global quotas. So the firms now know that with a higher quota, they are ensured to have a higher share of that quota. Okay? So it's true that they have incentives to care about future stock, but they also have more incentive for more illegal and more harvest in the present. So here there is a trade-off. And we don't really know what is the sign, we will say, of this effect. Okay? So let me talk about economic effects of ITQs in Chile. What have happened with ITQs in Chile? And sorry for the Spanish, but this is for Latin American fellows, so I guess everybody understands what it says here. So it's basically how have the export of fishing products evolved over the last 10 years here, last 9 years here. And you can see here what the quantity of export have been in the fisheries sectors. And you can see a slightly increase here from around 1.2 million tons to almost 1.45 million tons. So there have been a slightly increase in the export and the quantity exported. So, but there is something here. This includes salmon export. Okay, so this has been mainly due to export of salmon and not of export of products with these main fisheries regulated with ITQs. But look what happened with the value of that export. This is the value in $1 million. This has increased incredible, okay, during the last 10 years. So we don't have a lot more fish, but we have a lot more revenue from this harvest, okay? And some of this has been because we have a high price for the fish meal, an incredible high price for the fish meal, and also because the industry is actually using the fish with the more valued products, okay? So what we fish? You can see in this plot that almost 75% of our harvest in Chile is from 3 species. Anchoveta, anchoveta in Spanish, anchovita for you or something like that, sardines, and jack mackerel. Jack mackerel fisheries harvest before were like 75% of our total landings. And now that they are collapsed, it's just 22%, just 22%. And all the others are just very small, including salmon aquaculture. So quantity of salmon aquaculture is really small compared with all these other. So basically fishing, when we talk about fisheries in Chile, we talk about anchovetas, jurel, mackerel, and sardines, okay? And this is 2009. Look how this have evolved over the last 10 years. So this is the total quantity of, what we just saw is just this part for the last year. This is how this have evolved from 1999 to 2009. And you can see that there was a reduction here, like a collapse in the total quantity. They introduced ITQs, and we expected that after ITQs, this somehow should have recovered. That didn't happen. So what happened with this increase? This was mainly due to the anchovy. The anchovy is very fluctuating, and it all depends on recruitment, how that is going to be year after year. So these increases have been due mainly to anchovies. But what have happened with mackerel is a reduction in harvest. Okay? What have happened with sardines is an increase here, but mainly due to the reduction in the other ones. So when they don't find the jurel, when they don't find the anchoveta, they go for sardines. Okay? So that's basically what explains this. So total quotas have not been able to increase. Total harvest have not been able to increase. And you say, well, but it's not that bad, right? So it's almost the same. But this is harvest. This is not stock. This is not fish stock. The most impressive part is what have happened with fish stocks. So what happened with the destinations of harvest? Okay, have firms actually been producing more value products? So this is the proportion of the fish that goes to 3 different products. One, this is the proportion of fish going to fish meal. So what we expected is that less fish meal was produced and more value products were produced. This is what have happened with canned fish. This is what have happened with frozen fish. So you can see a slight increase in the proportion. Well, maybe it's important, from 22% to almost 40%, 36% of harvest go now to canned fish, which creates a lot more value and creates a lot more employment. The same happened with frozen fish. And with fish meal, you can see a reduction here from 72% to almost 40%. Okay. One important thing is that you might think that there is, these two different trade-offs, two different incentives for this. One is the ITQs that give you the right to fish, to do whatever you want with your fish. So you want to do more of this. But the other incentive is the price of fish meal. So what have happened in the last year is that the price of fish meal has increased incredibly from around $400 per ton to over $1,200. So it has been an incredible increase. So that's a big incentive to keep producing more fish meal. So this is just jack mackerel. So with mackerel, this is what happened. What happened with anchovy? Nothing. Just fish meal. What happened with sardines? Nothing. Just fish meal. 99.9% of them go to just fish meal production. So this is the nice, this is the ugly part of the effects of ITQs. What have happened with the recovery of the stocks? This is jack mackerel. So this is kind of the history of jack mackerel over the last 30 years, 40 years, sorry. So what happened in the beginning is that jack mackerel is a very international fishery. This fish move a lot in the South Pacific. And the jack mackerel came to Chile to colonize this Chilean coast in the 75 and 90s. And there was basically open access, and fishermen start fishing a lot of jack mackerel. This was really the main source of the Chilean fisheries in that years. And after the 90s, what happened is that firms saw that there was a lot of people interested on their business, and they wanted to close the access. So they start trying to use in 99 individual transferable quota, but they couldn't. So the only thing that happened was they closed entry. So no new entrants were allowed to enter in this fishery, but they still increased harvest because they still increased the effort. So the same people that was there was buying more boats, bigger boats, etc. So they still increased harvest. This is harvest. But the stock just declined, okay, incredibly. So it was harder and harder without a global quota to harvest the same amount. So harvests were reduced. And this is what they call a collapse in the fishery. They couldn't fish more. It's not that the stock were reduced. It's that it was harder and harder to fish the same quantity with the same boats, with bigger and bigger boats. So they finally introduced a tag, a global quota. And what happened is that this global quota kind of worked a little bit in these 2 years. They introduced a temporary individual quota. So they had the race for the fish here, and they really realized they didn't want global quotas. They needed something else. And what they had was ITQs. So they convinced the industry that they wanted ITQs. And after ITQs, harvest has been, this is exactly what I showed you before, relatively constant, a little bit decreasing, the harvest. But what happened with the stock? Look at that. So stock have been reduced after the introduction of ITQs. You can say, why? I mean, this is just environment. This is just El Nino. The firms say, well, this is just El Nino fault. This is just, international fleet who is harvesting a lot outside the economic exclusive zone of Chile. So this is all Chinese people faults and all that. So they are not responsible for this. So jack mackerel stock going down. What happened with anchovies? Well, anchovy is this is the stock size of anchovy, very fluctuating. Very fluctuating until 3 years after ITQs. What happened after ITQs? Just a collapse of the stock again. Anchovy is overexploited in the north. What happened with the other fisheries? With sardines in the north were overexploited. They wanted to recover. Nothing have happened. No recovery of anchovies. What happened with merluza, the hake, right? The stock has been from 1.6 thousand to 35700 from 2001 to 2009. So another collapsed fishery. The only fisheries that are kind of better managed are the sardines and anchovy in the center south, so around Concepcion, where we come from. That's are relatively well managed. But why? Mainly because these are coastal fisheries. So they are mainly fished by the artisanal fishermen. So the industry cannot really access. There is a limitation in the sea where industrial fishermen can fish. Okay, they cannot enter to the coast. And in that area, just artisanal fishermen can fish. And these are the species that maintains the artisanal fisheries. But after ITQs, again, there is no change. There is no real change on what is going on in this fishery. So the main fisheries have clear signs of overexploitation. I think ITQs have not helped. I don't know what will happen without ITQs, but ITQs have not helped to recover the stocks. Why? It's not working. As this haven't worked. I think that the main problem is the quota setting process and the political, social pressures to increase the quotas. How that works? In Chile, what happened is that mainly marine scientists do the stock assessment, and they propose a different level of risk and different level of quota to the Undersecretary of Fishing. What after that happened is that the Undersecretary of Fishing, the Subsecretario de Pesca, is take this scientific advice into account, look over the windows and see how many people is crying for quota outside, burning boats and all that. And he said, well, scientific said that, but people want more quota, and I think I should give them more quota. So they set the quota based on scientific advice, just biological advice, no economic advice, okay, no social scientist advice, and the social pressure, okay. Then this go with this proposal to a management board, fisheries management board, that has been mostly dominated by firms, by the industry workers, who are clearly influenced by their boss, right, by the industry. And they decide over the quota level. So the undersecretary proposed them a quota, and they say yes or they say no, and they usually say no, okay, until the undersecretary proposed the level of quota they want. Renato is laughing there because he knows how this works. And then basically what happens is that the Undersecretary of Fisheries have to negotiate with the industry before they propose something to this management board. So when they have something like an agreement, they propose and the other accept. And the problem is that there is a lot of political power of the industry, of the industry worker, and they basically decide what the quota is. And this is going to be surprising to you. I hope you understand this graph. So the darker green column is the scientific advice for the quota with the maximum risk acceptable level. The second one is what the Undersecretary of Fishing proposed to the management board, the first proposal, based on scientific advice and social pressure. The third one is what the management board decides. And the fourth one are the actual harvest. You can see that in 2001, everything went good, except that they couldn't meet the quota. So in the next year, the scientific said, well, no, we are fishing too much. We are not actually constraining the harvest. So we should set a lower quota. Undersecretary agreed, but industry didn't agree. Industry said, no, that's too low. We need more quota. We need 1.6. Well, they fished 1.5. They couldn't meet the quota again. Next year, okay, it's okay. I agree. We're going to give you more quota. No, we need more. Couldn't fish that. Couldn't fish all that. Well, Undersecretary of Fishing started negotiating with them, so didn't listen to scientific advice. Higher quota, not enough. We need more. We cannot meet the quota. So at the end, what have happened is that the quotas has been set much higher than scientific advice. The proposal of the Undersecretary of Fishing has been much higher. The industry have set quotas much higher, but they cannot meet the quota. And look what happened here. So they cannot meet even 50% of the quota they set. So what kind of quota are you talking about? You are not restricting harvest. So this is exactly the same thing that don't having any quota at all, right? Just let us fish. We just distribute what you'd say what we want to fish, and then we go for it, okay? But we cannot harvest it. So I think this is the part that hasn't worked with Chilean fisheries. And all this has to be, it has nothing to do with science from the biological point of view. It all has to do with political power, political pressure, social needs, okay? And the way in which political pressure and economic rents are pushing decision-making more than the way that scientific is, pushing decision-making. The social pressure, the political power is influencing the decision-making process here much more than the scientific advice. And that is creating unsustainable economic success, I think, What happened with the social effects of ITQs in Chile? Well, after ITQs, there have been an incredible increase in vertical integration. So what vertical integration means, it's basically how much of the firms that process the fish owns the boats that fish, okay? So this first part shows you the percentage of fish coming from firms-owned vessels, okay? So in 2000, in the north, 51% of the fish came from their own vessels. Sorry. In 2004, this is all the year we have data, is 88%. So they only, in average, they only buy from other, mainly artisanal fishermen, 12% of the fish they process. What happened in the south is not that bad. Why? Because here we have the anchovies and the sardines, okay? And they are basically artisanal. So there have been an increase, but not that big. Okay, what happened from the other perspective, what we call integration, forward integration. This is kind of backward integration from the processing to the fish. What happened with forward? So how much of the landings of a firm, of a fishing, goes to a processing plant that is owned by the same firm? Before was 54%, now it's 99%. So they don't give fish to anybody else. They just use the fish they cut in their own plants. What happened in the south? From 55% to 78%. I'm pretty sure if we compute the same numbers for 2010, we will be much, much closer to 100%. This is incredible for Nor Iwan people because they are not allowed to have vertical integration, right? They have to sell all the fish in the market, and if they own a plant and they own a boat, they take the fish, they sell it, and they have to buy it in the market, even when they harvest it. Okay, that's not happening in Chile, and that is, I think, one of the problems because these firms are really powerful. They basically have a lot of influence, a lot of market power, what we call as economists. So the number of firms was reduced, but this was due mainly to mergers. So firms start merging to do a better management of the fishing processing, of the fishing activities. So they create bigger companies, and they didn't allow any new entrant, any new firms to enter. Okay, they don't even sell quota to other companies. Okay, they just merge between them. So the employment in harvesting sector was reduced because of they have less activity in fishing. They have less boats now. The employment in processing industry was increased. Okay. And that was about six times more than the reduction in the harvesting sector. So the harvesting sector employment was reduced. The processing industry increased a lot, 6 times more than the reduction in the harvesting sector. So they are creating more employment, okay, but mostly in the processing sector. But the permanent employment they are creating went down from 58 to 18. So they are actually hiring people for short period of season. They are just, you know, out. How do you say that? They are hiring people, hiring other companies to do the job. Exactly, they are doing outsourcing of the activities. And I think this is one of the most important social effects, is that many of the workers, the fishermen that were working in the harvesting sector, they quit their jobs and they just entered the artisanal fleet. So they were fishermen, so they were fired from their works in the industry. So they went to their home. What do I know to do? I know how to fish, okay? Then I go, buy a boat, and start being an artisanal fisherman. So the number of artisanal fishermen has exploded incredibly. I don't have the numbers here, but it's super high. And that creates a lot more boats for a lot less fish in the artisanal fishermen, who are the guys who really pressure over the Undersecretary of Fisheries, you know, to increase the quotas. Because, you know, my kids are crying at home. I don't know what to do. I don't know what else to do. I just know how to fish. So I need more quota, okay? So this has been an important effect of ITQs in Chile. I just have 10 more minutes. Well, there is even an antitrust lawsuit from a small company that wanted to buy quota, but they said that the big companies didn't want to sell them quotas. So they didn't have any access. It was harder and harder. So the company said, well, you can go buy to the artisanal fishermen. But the artisanal fishermen said, no, we cannot sell to you because I have a contract with this big company. If I sell it to you, then, well, they are not going to buy to me anymore. So it's really a hard problem. And these big companies, again, are controlling the relationships with the small artisanal fishermen. So they come there, go there, buy the artisanal fishermen say, well, you know what, I don't have money for buying the boat. I need to repair my boat. I don't have the money. The company said, don't worry, I give you the money. Go repair your boat, but you have to sell that fish to me and to the price that I say. And they say, oh yeah, thank you very much. You're so good to me. You know, and that's creating a lot of problems. So that's what we call market power. And based on that, there is a big discussion now about the idea of auctioning the quotas. So they say, well, we have been giving all this amount of wealth to this industry, just 7 families. Okay, that's all. And you have not taken care of the fish. So the stock are collapsed. So why should we give you this again? We should sell you this. Or if anybody else wants to fish, we should sell these quotas to them. And there is now a huge discussion about that. So one of the big deals is the rent distribution. Again, the rents from ITQs have concentrated in 7 families. No 7 companies, 7 families. And they have reduced the income for artisanal fishers because there are more fishermen and less fish over year to year. And workers because there is lower salaries. There are formal and stable jobs, but there are lower salaries. So these 7 families are actually getting all the benefits, the unsustainable benefits from ITQs. And an important thing, the cost of management is not fully covered by firms. They say, well, we pay taxes, so you just use those taxes to do research or do whatever you need to manage the fishery. Okay? Well, conclusions. Good and the bad of ITQs experience in Chile. ITQs have been successful and sustainably successful on creating wealth, eliminating rent dissipation, so what we expected to do. They have improving industry profitability with lower catches. There is more fish going to Canada than frozen fish, so what the literature in ITQs expect. but just a little bit, just in jack mackerel, nothing with anchovies, nothing with sardines. And the average value of exports have increased. So ITQs, I think, have achieved the economic goal of increasing the value, but a lot of help. They have had a lot of help from higher, milk prices, fish meal prices. There is problem to access raw fish from processors that don't own quotas. Okay, higher concentration, vertical integration, fresh fish is not available to small processing plants. Industry competition problems, market power for the industry controlling the input prices, so the price at which they buy the fish to the small companies, and also the price they pay for labor. Why people is so disconformed with ITQs? What? The companies say, well, you don't like progress. You don't like, economic progress. We have bigger companies. We have beautiful boats now, but people is not happy. You can extend this to everything that's going on in Chile. Why do you have so much travel? So why do you like this president if you have the best, human development index in Latin America? You have the higher rate of growth. You have a lot of money. You have a lot of blah 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 blah. But you're not happy. Why you are so? You're bad boys. you don't like this. And I think why we are so disconformed, because we believe that ITQs will solve all our problems, and that can't happen. That cannot happen. Okay. And one of the main thing is that biological goals are not ensured with ITQs. If you don't have a good quota setting process, ITQs are not going to help you a lot. It all depends on the institutions to set the quota and to avoid pressure groups. And, the political scientists need to help us to find ways of avoiding that. Workers that have stayed in their works or entered the processing sector have made some progress, but there is high concentration, and there is a huge thing about rent distribution. That's Chile reality. Okay? Rent distribution in Chile is the worst in the OECD countries. Okay, the worst in the world. High capital rent, low salary, no space for new firms. So there is a lot of people that have been affected negatively, and they are not happy with ITQs. The industry is super happy. They don't want change. They just want. Remember when we had the earthquake in 2010? They say, "Oh no, we're so bad. Please extend the law for another 10 years so we can recover." And they started the discussion then because they were so happy with ITQs, and this was just the perfect excuse. They don't have anything to fish, so the plants that were affected probably wouldn't have fish, wouldn't have processed fish anyway. They had insurance, so they didn't have any loss actually, but they just wanted to extend the law for another 10 years. And the main thing is that ITQs alone cannot achieve, this is what I think, all management goals. We need additional instrument. We need one instrument for each goal. So if we want social goals, we need instrument to reach those goals. This is one of the major challenges we as scientists looking at this problem from a multidisciplinary point of view have to understand. We need better instruments to manage fisheries, to manage sustainable fisheries. So we think that the Chilean ITQ system needs to be improved to ensure fishery sustainability. The quota setting process needs to be changed, needs to be revised. We need to give more importance to scientific advice. We need to incorporate the social goals in that scientific advice, because if we don't, if we just think about the fish and not about the people when giving that advice, the people who pressure the Undersecretary of Fishing is going to be more important than the biological scientific advice. So we need to think in a way of including both social and biological goals in the scientific advice. And of course, we need to convince politicians, decision makers, that it's good to think about science, that science can help. And you're great at that. So I think you can help us a lot as Bren School, as multidisciplinary group, as Latin American fellows to do that. So we have thought about what we can do, and we think that a good instrument will be this kind of beauty contest. So we say these are the goals. We have like managers. We want to create jobs. We want to do this. So you tell me what you will do, and I will decide on the distribution of the quota based on how you can meet those goals. So we are thinking that a good instrument for Chile will be kind of a auctioning of the permits, but not auctioning for price, which is just an economic instrument again, but auctioning for the capacity you will have to meet all these management goals. We have said this to the managers, and they say, no, that's too much work. We don't want to worry about saying what the goals are going to be. We just want to have the less problems we had. But we have been thinking about better ways of doing this, and this is an idea we are working on. And we think that will be a good instrument to achieve sustainability in fisheries. We need to improve institution, we need to improve enforcement, and we think that the industry must cover full management costs. If the industry is not able to cover full management costs, it means that the fishery is not profitable. If we have to spend more money on managing the fishery than the profit that the firms make, it means it's a bad business for the country. Why don't we spend that money, in education or in health? So we need to convince the firms that they have to cover management costs. Well, I think the big difference is the level of cultural development and the level of forward-looking of the industry. So we are developing countries. We are concerned about today's needs. And I think firms don't have on their ADN the idea of thinking about the future. They just want to make money today. And if this business go bad, well, we just buy some trees and do forestry, or just buy some mining. So the guys who owns the guys who owns the industry actually have diversified firms all over the country on all over the natural resources, gas, mining, forestry, etc. So I think the industry is not just concerned about sustainability, and that's what makes it a bad decision. So I would think in an economic point of view, they have very, very high discount rates. And I think that's an interesting point for developing countries. Renato, please. It's so hard for the under, Ministry of Fisheries to negotiate with the firms that they said recently. They said, well, you know what? You industrial fishermen and you artisanal fishermen agree on how you're going to share the total quotas, and if you agree on that, we're not going to auction the quotas. And it took them I don't know, 3 months to make an agreement, just the last day, just the last hour. And the industrial fishermen decide giving the artisanal fishermen more quota. They are going to buy the quota anyway. And they decide what price they are going to pay them. And so that the quota were not auctioned. And then the president said, why did you do that? That doesn't have any value on the Congress. So you now need to convince the Congress that we're not going to auction the fish. But it's true. I mean, political process in developing countries are so important to understand how we scientists can affect the management. So we need to look at that. So I'm so happy to have met Rachel here. And we're going to do some progress on that, I guess. Well, not only in Mexico, Peru just copied the Chilean system in 2009, just exactly the same way. They changed one name in the letter, I think. In Chile, it's called LMCA. In Peru, it's called EMCA. And everything is just the same. So everybody thinks that this system is just going to, but that's the illusion that the industry is selling, because it's so good for them in the short run, that they want everybody to believe that this system is just perfect. Sorry, where are you from? Peru. Okay, great. Well, they sell the story about cooperative management. So let the fishermen decide. They know what is good for them, right? Whereas we think that works in communities, but not with big industries. I think that was the whole point. So all this idea international that for the management of fisheries in a sustainable way, the people who has the best information are actually the fishermen. So let's do like cooperative management with them. And then try to copy that idea, put that idea in the industry and say, well, it's obviously the industry pressure. The industry spent a lot of money on that, convincing people that it's good, that let them set the quotas. And it's not just like, well, you leave the industry set the quota. It's you create a management board with people that represent all the sector. So, like in a proportional way. So you have all the industry, you have the workers of the industry, you have the politicians paid by the industry, you know. So even when you try to represent all the sectors, the industry has such a huge pressure on many, many others that at the end it's just what they want. Well, that's a major issue in Chile too. We have tried to work on that with my colleagues in Concepcion. So, for example, we have wrote some theoretical and empirical papers. And in the last thing we did, I wrote a paper about estimating weight. The big thing is, how do you know how much is illegal fishing? You cannot ask fishermen, right? They are not going to tell you. They say, no, nothing. We have been going there and asked the actual people in the boats, and they say it's huge. And why? Because they say, now the firms tell the processing plant tell me how much to fish. They tell me I need 40 tons today. Go get 40 tons. And if they get 50, they don't know what to do with the other 10. They throw it away. And that's very, very usual in Chile now. Because the processing plants owns the quota, their needs are what, you know. So probably people in Chile are not going to like this presentation, particularly in the industry, so I hope they don't see it. They are not going to give me more information anymore. So we did our research trying to estimate, like with econometric methods and some biological methods, not very good biological. But we got like the illegal fishing or the uncontrolled fishing is like 1.2 million tons in the jack mackerel, which is even more than the quota. Well, the thing is that it's well known in the literature that if you have ITQs, you have more incentive to do illegal fishing. So you need good enforcement institutions. And we have really bad enforcement in developing countries. We just don't, it's like we like to cheat, right, in developing countries, and then we don't have good institutions to avoid that. So it's really hard. How bad it is that the people that had to go there and certify the harvest is paid by the industry. So the industry pays them, have to pay them. So they are workers of the industry. So they put whatever the boss says. Well, I have a lot of more questions. You were asking? So how it works is that a private company go there, conduct an audit. They take a little bit of fish. They ask the captain of the boat, how much fish do you have? This amount. Okay. They take a look to the, you know, they say, well, see, more or less, it's fine. Then take a sample of the fish to see how much is under the length, the lower length, and that's pretty much it. The firms say it works perfectly, of course, and they don't want us to evaluate the system. We have been pushing to the regulator, you should evaluate this system, this enforcement system. And they don't want, of course. You know why. It looks like too sad, but in reality, the thing is that we as scientists have a lot of responsibility in this. We need to understand what's going on, what are the main drivers, and we need to design better management instruments. And I think the only way of doing that is working in a multidisciplinary way. And I think you, as a Bren school, is the best, really the best place to do that in the world. So you have a lot of responsibility. You Latin American fellows have a lot of responsibility on this continue happening in the future or not. So you are the hope. Thank you very much.